What happens when royal heritage meets late-night edge, and one of the world's most recognizable royals storms off in the middle of a live taping? Picture this: a primetime studio, iconic desk, bright lights, and Prince Harry sitting across from Stephen Colbert, ready to promote a new philanthropic endeavor. But what unfolded instead was a clash of wills so raw, so unexpected, it became global, instant virality. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, leave a comment below, and let me know, was Harry foolish for walking off or brave for refusing to stay when provoked? The show opens with Colbert's signature enthusiasm. Harry steps onto the stage with steady confidence, greeting the audience with a warm nod and clipped wave. He takes his seat across the desk, adjusting the lapel of his suit jacket. Viewers at home feel calm, polished, even hopeful. This will be a smart conversation about veterans, mental health, their charity work. No bombshells, just purpose. But Colbert isn't there to safe zone his guest. He leans in, gets that trademark glint in his eye, and opens with a smooth line. So, Your Royal Highness, what drives a man born into privilege to break ranks with centuries of tradition and become, essentially, an American activist? Harry smiles, calm. Steve, I've always believed that titles don't define purpose. I've tried to do meaningful work where I am, which sometimes means choosing the unconventional path. Colbert nods. Absolutely, and your charity has done incredible work. But I've got to ask, how do you reconcile inheriting a position in a hierarchy with advocating for equality? Isn't that a little convenient? The tone shifts. Harry takes a breath. I understand that tension. I've made choices to leave those traditions behind, to live under my own terms, and yes, those choices come with irony. But context matters. I don't hide who I am. That's when the questions go deeper. Colbert brings up accusations from royal watchers. Has Harry become a media brand? Are the memoir, Netflix project, podcast all just self-promotion? Harry maintains his stories are real, intended to help others, not rebuild his image. But then Colbert pivots. Isn't it possible that digging into trauma or airing it publicly could be seen as benefiting your profile? Like, say what you want, but your platform gets bigger with every confession. Harry's jaw tightens. He leans forward. I made the choice to be transparent because I believe honesty helps. Not me. Not my brand. People who've been through darkness know that you can't pretend it doesn't exist. Colbert nods, but pushes on. I get that. But sometimes vulnerability crosses into comfort. You've got a mansion in Montecito. You're producing content with Hollywood. Does that dilute your message? Because it looks to some like you're selling pain. That's the moment. A beat of silence. Harry blinks twice. His expression shifts from calm to defensive to visibly irritated. If I wanted to sell anything, I'd be out there selling lies. Every step I've taken has been with purpose. People want to simplify, paint me as a victim or a villain, and I'm not getting into that box. Colbert's face remains kind, curious, but unyielding. All right. But you've also dismissed criticisms of your wife's Netflix doc on mental health as distractions. Yet, when critics question you, suddenly they don't understand context. That's defensive, right? Harry sits back, tension mounting. Voice rising slightly. It's not defense, it's truth. Not everything is a marketing campaign. Colbert persists. It can be, though. Wouldn't leaving the crown, launching a brand, touring the world, lining up multi-million-dollar deals, in part to reshape your public image, doesn't that look like media artifice? Harry's face flushes. He stands, gestures suddenly, voice sharp but controlled. Steve, I'm here to talk about veterans. My work. This conversation isn't about hurt feelings, it's about impact. If this keeps going down the rabbit hole of motive and irony, then we're missing the point. Colbert raises an eyebrow. But if I can't ask, then what is on the table? Are we guests or PR suits? Harry breathes hard, voice breaking. Then maybe this isn't the right place for that conversation. And with that, he storms off camera, walking briskly past Colbert, past cameras, toward the exit. The audience gasps. Colbert is momentarily speechless before quickly regaining composure. The camera cuts to applause lines, confusion, a sudden broken rhythm. Audience members stand, some stunned, others whispering. Colbert raps, saying, "I wish him the best," and transitions to a moment of silence. That exit clip, it shattered the internet. Harry walks off exploded. Reaction channels had it on autoplay. Excerpts went viral. He blew up. Read one headline. Rowdy Royal. Read another. The world was watching and wondering why royal protests still hold global weight. What happened next backstage was described by insiders as shocking calm. Harry's team said it was planned. Colbert said it wasn't. Final Cut said, whatever gets audiences, even if the story veers off script. So was this a royal meltdown or an act of defiance? A breakdown under pressure or a stand-up against uncomfortable questioning? A calculated PR pivot or the breakdown of a man who built his life around controlling his narrative? After Prince Harry's dramatic exit from Stephen Colbert's studio, the energy in the room shifted in an instant. The cameras were still rolling, but the atmosphere was now heavy with shock and confusion. Crew members froze in place. Producers exchanged hurried whispers. Stephen Colbert remained seated for several seconds, clearly processing what had just unfolded. This wasn't the kind of awkward pause that occasionally occurs during heated debates. This was a royal walk-off, and it had just played out on live television in front of a stunned studio audience. Colbert leaned forward into the mic and, with a trademark smirk, tried to cut the tension. "Well," he quipped, "that escalated quickly." A ripple of uncertain laughter spread through the audience, but it did little to reset the mood. The moment had gone from awkward to historic, and everyone in the building, from the stagehands to the guests in the green room, knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. Backstage, Prince Harry was calm but visibly tense. He didn't speak to anyone at first. He simply removed his mic, handed it off to a nearby crew member, and walked briskly toward a private holding room designated for high-profile guests. No yelling, no dramatic outbursts, just quiet intensity. A few moments later, his PR handler slipped into the room behind him. According to a staffer nearby, their conversation was low but serious. The handler reportedly said, "You don't have to go back out. The optics can be handled. We'll frame this as you taking a stand." Harry didn't respond immediately, but his silence spoke volumes. He had made his choice. On stage, producers scrambled to decide how to fill the airtime. The show couldn't just cut away or pretend the moment hadn't happened. It had unfolded too late in the taping and was already integrated into the final cut. The decision was made quickly. Leave the footage in. Don't try to sanitize it. Let the world see what happened. And see it they did. Within hours of airing, the clip had gone viral. YouTube lit up with thumbnails of Harry mid-walk-off, while TikTok and X were flooded with reaction videos and furious debates. Opinions were polarized. Supporters of Harry hailed his exit as principled and courageous, accusing Colbert of bad faith and ambush tactics. Others mocked Harry's reaction, claiming he had proven once again that he couldn't handle even the mildest pushback. The headlines poured in. Prince melts down on live TV. Colbert vs. The Crown. Royal rage. WHO went too far. British media had a field day. The Daily Mail ran the photo of Harry storming off with the caption, "Wounded or weak," while The Guardian offered a more diplomatic take, calling the exchange a culture clash between comedic satire and royal formality. Meanwhile, American commentators picked sides. Pundits on late-night talk shows joked about the royal exit. Morning news programs debated whether Harry's reaction was authentic or orchestrated. It was everywhere. Behind closed doors, Buckingham Palace reportedly responded with cold indifference. According to palace insiders, senior aides were disappointed, but not surprised. One unnamed source remarked, "This is what happens when you leave the institution and stop listening to people who understand media strategy." The royals made no official statement, but the silence was loud enough to echo. As for Stephen Colbert, the comedian didn't offer an apology, but he didn't gloat either. The next night, during his opening monologue, he addressed the incident with his usual finesse. "We ask tough questions here," he said, "but sometimes tough questions come with tough exits." The audience laughed, but the line carried a subtle edge. Colbert had struck a nerve, and he knew it. What shocked many observers, though, was that Meghan Markle remained silent in the immediate aftermath. Usually quick to release statements or issue clarifications, neither she nor her representatives said a word for several days. Some speculated that she was furious behind the scenes, not just at Colbert, but possibly even at Harry for walking off and reigniting the media circus. Others believed she was advising restraint, knowing that further engagement would only pour gasoline on the fire. Still, the silence didn't last long. A week after the broadcast, a grainy behind-the-scenes video was leaked from a crew member's phone. It showed Harry backstage, pacing nervously and muttering under his breath. He twisted it again. That short clip reignited the firestorm. What had Colbert twisted was Harry referring to the suggestion that he was monetizing trauma, or the accusation that his truth changes depending on the audience. Suddenly, the narrative shifted again. Psychologists were interviewed on news programs to analyze Harry's body language. PR experts debated whether this helped or hurt the couple's brand. Former royal advisors weighed in on what this meant for Harry's already tense relationship with the British press. What no one could agree on, however, was the big question: did Harry walk out because he was unfairly attacked, or because he had been exposed? Was it a moment of bravery, or a retreat? The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. He had come expecting a tough conversation, but when Colbert's questions hit deeper than expected, Harry's carefully maintained composure began to crack. The walk-off wasn't just about that one interview. It was about everything: the media pressure, the family tension, the scrutiny, the criticism. It was years of bottled-up emotion, triggered by a few sharp questions from a comedian known for not pulling punches. And that's what made it so powerful. Because no matter where you stand on Prince Harry, whether you believe he's a brave truth-teller or a privileged figure playing the victim, there's no denying that this moment showed us something real. It wasn't polished. It wasn't scripted. It was raw. And in a world where every move is calculated and media-trained, that rawness was unforgettable. As the media frenzy around Prince Harry's explosive walkout continued to unfold, a quieter but equally intense discussion was taking place behind the scenes, not just within entertainment circles, but in political ones too. The ripple effect of the incident began to reach beyond late-night TV and into broader conversations about celebrity, accountability, and the nature of power in modern media. While social media was ablaze with memes and debates, producers at other networks and shows were nervously reviewing their own upcoming royal-adjacent segments, wondering whether a similar outburst could derail their broadcasts. Meanwhile, inside the Sussex camp, damage control was already underway. Meghan Markle's media advisors were in overdrive, weighing the pros and cons of releasing an official joint statement. The concern wasn't just about Harry's image, it was about brand Sussex as a whole. Their public persona, the philanthropic, conscious, brave truth-tellers, had taken a direct hit. There was no denying that Harry's walkout painted a complicated picture, half principled stance, half emotional unraveling. The question was, could they shape it into something powerful? Ironically, it was Harry's critics who gave them the opening. A conservative British tabloid published a scathing op-ed titled, "When the Crown Cracks," accusing Harry of being emotionally unstable and intellectually unprepared for serious conversation. The piece claimed he panicked at the first sign of real confrontation and bolted like a teenager caught lying. That article, though intended to tear him down, allowed Meghan and Harry's defenders to flip the script. Now the story became one of a man daring to speak out, only to be mocked and bullied by a media machine that refuses to let go of the old monarchy. Enter the think pieces. Within 48 hours of the Colbert incident, online platforms like The Atlantic, Vanity Fair, and The Cut published deeper analyses, painting Harry as a symbol of institutional trauma, someone raised in an emotionally stunted system who is now being ridiculed for trying to break free. Writers argued that his reaction wasn't weakness, but a raw reflection of what it means to publicly challenge legacy power, media expectations, and cultural programming all at once. Suddenly, the moment had transcended entertainment. It was now social commentary. And Colbert? His team wasn't immune to the scrutiny either. While some praised him for holding Harry accountable, others accused him of crossing a line, of going too far, of baiting a guest for a viral moment. That accusation was particularly potent coming from media professionals who respect Colbert's usual balance of comedy and empathy. Critics noted that while comedians are expected to push boundaries, they're also expected to read the room. And in this case, many felt Colbert's tone was unusually combative, even smug. Behind the scenes, multiple insiders reported that Colbert wasn't initially aware of how deeply the questions had cut. According to one staffer, Stephen thought he was just doing what he always does, getting past the PR polish. But afterward, when he saw the playback, even he admitted, okay, maybe that was too much, too fast. There was even talk of producers trying to reach out to Harry's team to smooth things over, though whether that happened or not remains unconfirmed. By the time the weekend rolled around, the story had become the defining moment of the news cycle. Other royals were being asked to weigh in. Prince William, unsurprisingly, stayed silent. But former palace aides and royal biographers began appearing on talk shows, offering everything from psychological profiles of Harry's emotional fragility to speculation about Meghan's role in shaping his media strategy. Curiously, Meghan's silence endured. Even as the headlines screamed and the reaction videos piled up, she made no appearance, issued no statement, and remained entirely off social media. It was a calculated move, and many interpreted it as strategic, waiting until the noise had peaked so that whatever came next could reclaim control of the narrative. Then, something unexpected happened. Days after the incident, Harry reappeared, not on a talk show or a podcast, but at a veterans event in Los Angeles. He didn't mention the walk-off. He didn't address Colbert. But what he did do was deliver a heartfelt speech about resilience, accountability, and mental health. The press was quick to connect the dots. Was this his subtle way of redirecting the conversation? It worked, at least partially. Headlines shifted slightly. Harry changes the tune, and, from meltdown to message, began appearing. While critics still viewed the Colbert incident as a moment of weakness, supporters praised the pivot. It's not about the walk-off, one Twitter user wrote. It's about the comeback. And Harry just gave one. But the real test came not from the press, but from Hollywood. Would he be invited back to do interviews? Would studios still want to work with him and Meghan on upcoming projects? That's when the offers started drying up quietly behind the scenes. One producer admitted, there's hesitation now. Nobody wants to book someone who might walk out mid-shoot. Another insider noted that Netflix, which had been planning another docuseries with the couple, decided to delay production. Whether those delays were about the Colbert debacle or simply internal scheduling conflicts wasn't clear. But the implication was obvious. The walk-off had consequences, not just in the court of public opinion, but in the business of image-making. And yet, through it all, one thing remained undeniable. People couldn't stop watching. The clip of Harry leaving the Colbert stage racked up millions of views. Every outlet, From gossip blogs to major news stations covered it. Comedians spoofed it. Commentators dissected it. It was the cultural moment no one could stop talking about. Because at the end of the day, whether you think Prince Harry was brave or brittle, ambushed or just unprepared, his walk-off exposed a deeper truth about the intersection of royalty, celebrity, and authenticity. People are hungry for realness, even when it's messy, especially when it's messy. And Harry gave them exactly that. The fallout from Prince Harry's dramatic walkout wasn't just another viral TV moment. It was the culmination of a slow-burning tension between the British royal and the American media. And while social media was awash with memes, hot takes, and reaction videos, there was a deeper conversation brewing. Has Prince Harry finally reached the limits of his rebranding in the United States? In the days following the incident, public opinion began to polarize even more sharply. Supporters hailed him as a man pushed to the edge, tired of being a media punching bag, while critics labeled him a fragile elitist unable to handle the same scrutiny he had spent years courting. But perhaps the most telling reactions came from within the entertainment industry itself, where image is everything and reputations are currency. Talk show producers quietly began reassessing the value of booking Harry. Some worried that his unpredictability might make future appearances too risky. Others, however, saw an opportunity, a raw, emotionally charged figure who could still generate enormous buzz. As one anonymous producer put it, he may have walked off, but he also walked right into every trending algorithm in the country. That's power, like it or not. Meanwhile, back in Montecito, Harry and Meghan's inner circle was strategizing. Damage control had already begun, but it was clear that this wasn't going to be resolved with a single social media post or heartfelt quote. Instead, there was a pivot, a slow, deliberate redirection of focus away from the drama and back onto causes they cared about: veterans' issues, mental health, media ethics. And for a moment, it looked like it might work. But Colbert wasn't done either. On the next episode of his show, Stephen opened with a monologue that walked the tightrope between humor and commentary. "I guess Prince Harry didn't like the questions," he joked, "which is weird, because I thought he wrote the book so we could ask them." The audience laughed, but there was an undercurrent of tension. Colbert defended his tone, reminding viewers that if you come to a late-night talk show, especially this one, you should expect the truth, and sometimes the truth doesn't come wrapped in silk. The response was mixed. Some felt Colbert had gone too far, showing a lack of compassion for someone who's been vocal about mental health. Others saw it as long overdue accountability for a public figure who had been handled with kid gloves for too long. But whatever your stance, the moment forced a reckoning both for Harry and for the media. It also raised an uncomfortable question. Had Prince Harry overestimated the American public's patience? His initial arrival in the U.S. was met with fascination and empathy. But over time, repeated interviews, contradictory narratives, and a media presence that often felt calculated had begun to erode that goodwill. The Colbert incident may have been the spark, but the fuel had been gathering for months. What made the walkout so powerful wasn't just the act itself, it was what it symbolized. For many, it was the end of the narrative honeymoon, the point at which the public stopped blindly accepting Harry's story and started questioning it more deeply. And once that happens, there's no going back. Still, Harry didn't disappear. He continued to appear at charitable events, speak on issues that mattered to him, and engage, albeit more cautiously, with select media outlets. But there was a noticeable change. The man who once seemed eager to tell his story everywhere now appeared more guarded, more selective. It wasn't necessarily a retreat, but it was a recalibration. And as for Meghan, she remained largely silent throughout the aftermath, offering no interviews, no statements, no public reaction. Whether that was strategic or personal, it allowed the story to remain centered on Harry and gave them both space to consider their next moves carefully. In the final analysis, the walk-off was not just a dramatic exit, it was a mirror, a reflection of all the contradictions, tensions, and unanswered questions that have followed Prince Harry since the day he stepped away from the royal family. It exposed the thin line between authenticity and PR, vulnerability and performance, truth and spectacle. And that's why people couldn't look away. Because whether you were cheering for him, cringing at him, or just trying to make sense of the chaos, one thing was clear. In a world where every moment is captured, clipped, and shared, walking away doesn't mean you're forgotten. Sometimes it makes you more unforgettable than ever.